As mentioned in the previous videos, one of the key characteristics of the second phase of waste management evolution was the significant increase in waste disposal fees, which were further augmented by waste disposal taxes. This had a multi-directional impact on the waste management supply and value chain in the European Union starting in the early 90s. Firstly, the high waste disposal fees made the message of waste reduction and reuse more clear. Waste generators were faced with the consequences of their irresponsible consumption behaviors and were forced to consider alternative methods to reduce the financial impact of the new disposal fee structure. This led to a quantified dimension being added to the awareness programs and recycling initiatives, resulting in a shorter implementation period and faster results. Secondly, the scientific and business communities saw this as an opportunity to research and invest in new waste prevention, reduction, and recycling technologies with attractive returns. The restrictive disposal tariffs became the benchmark for comparing the financial attractiveness of a waste recycling technology, shifting the focus from how much the waste generator had to pay for disposal to how much he could save by reducing and recycling. However, it was also necessary to justify the increase in waste disposal fees and taxes in order to make sense of them and avoid social resistance. This task specifically was given to the researchers and scientists in various fields who were tasked with calculating the real cost of waste disposal in dump sites and landfills. This was the era when we started to see massive studies and articles discussing new terminologies like full cost accounting, external cost of waste disposal, social and environmental cost of landfills, emissions cost, carbon capture cost, and many others. Now, let's focus on the situation in the GCC and MENA regions where waste disposal fees can be as low as a fraction of a dollar per ton. As a result, landfill is still the first choice in the waste management hierarchy, and this is a fundamental distinguishing factor that sets the EU apart from MENA and GCC regions in waste management economics. Even in the rare examples where the landfill gate fees and taxes are higher than the average, they lack the logic to explain the reason behind their existence and the size, as they are not backed by a theory or a strategy. It is concerning that the majority of waste management decision makers are unable to see the true cost of landfill, which is significantly higher than the fees paid by waste generators today. It is undisputed fact that we are one way or another promoting waste disposal in dump sites and subsidizing landfills, despite the declarations to the contrary. This is causing the supply and value chain to shy away from effective and environmentally friendly solutions and instead resort to direct dumping and depositing of waste on land. But what is the missing piece here? What is the link that we need to find in order to fully comprehend the real cost of landfill? In this video, I will take you through the waste disposal process and break it down from a business perspective. Step by step, I will guide you to understand the claim mentioned above related to us being landfill promoters. Let's start with a few questions to provoke your alternative perspective. 1. Do you agree that the final price of any product or service is determined by the total cost and target profits and affected by the demand levels? 2. If so, isn't it true that all input resources are delivered to any process at a cost that includes expenses and target profits associated with each of them, such as design, mining, production, logistics, losses, cost of money, and other costs. 3. Isn't it also true that products and services prices are subject to change as production costs change, and therefore prices are revised periodically? 4. Isn't it necessary to consider the cost of money, inflation, and other factors that may impact the anticipated cost of doing business over time, especially when developing investment plans for projects with long-term return on investment? 5. Do you agree that the investment plan for any project should include the capital cost of decommissioning of the installed assets and decontamination of the land at the end of the concession or useful life cycle of the project or its individual components, if the land is to be returned to the owner or reintroduced to the economic cycle? Is this not a crucial investment to allow the land as an asset to generate benefits for the society or to mitigate the environmental and health risks if the site is to be kept as is? 6, and last, isn't it true that land value changes over time and in the vast majority of cases towards appreciation as the urbanization and the civil infrastructure approaches, or in case of any development in adjacent areas? Well, if your responses to the above are positive, then why should waste disposal be any different? If a dump site provides a necessary service and is in high demand, and on the other hand, has a cost associated with depositing waste using a compliant process, then it makes complete sense to treat waste disposal as a business, just as we do with alternative recovery and recycling methods. Do you agree? Then let's use these principles and other logic business elements to calculate the true cost of landfills. Here we go. We will begin by assuming that we have two identical pieces of land, and we have chosen to keep the first one as a green field for future use, while we will convert the first land, which is L1, to a landfill. Both plots are located at the same distance from the urbanized area and have the same identical value, which is assumed to be 0 at point x1. Over time, as the urbanization approaches, the value of the land begins to increase, starting at a minimal value at point x2. As infrastructure continues to approach, the value of the land increases even further. Let's assume that at point x3, an investor decides to acquire the land as an asset to invest, potentially using it as a mortgage or as collateral to finance his commercial or residential development. From this moment on, the land only continues to rapidly appreciate in value, generating endless returns, not only to the investor, but also for the city in the form of taxes, fees, and other income. Now, let's assume that L2 plot was designated for the use as a landfill site at the point x1. This marks the beginning of a lengthy process of obtaining licenses and permits, including environmental impact assessment, building permits, and design approvals, as well as other necessary documentation in accordance with the regulations. And these procedures and the processes require significant expenses. Once all the approvals are completed, the construction of the landfill can begin, which involves further capital expenditure starting from the point x2 until the site is fully constructed and ready to receive waste. But as soon as the first ton of waste is deposited in this land, it immediately transforms into a liability, as the addition of the anticipated decommissioning and decontamination expenses must now be factored into the overall capital expenditure upon the decision to rehabilitate the land in the future for a potential residential or commercial development. There is also the possibility of collateral damage to the value of the adjacent land. But this will not be addressed in this video. Another change occurs once the landfill begins receiving waste. It starts generating revenue from waste disposal fees. And this happens while the first plot of land is not yet fully developed. And as time passes and the landfill continues to be a growing liability while the first plot appreciates in value at an accelerated rate. As capital expenses are invested in the first plot, this value increases even further. Now, eventually, let's assume that the end of the active life cycle of the landfill will be synchronized with the completion of the full development of L1. According to market rules, by that time, L1 will be fully developed, meaning that it will be generating the maximum return while the value continues to increase. On the other hand, once the landfill reaches its end of its active life, the revenue stream from waste disposal fees will cease to exist, and the developer will have to choose from several options further. Option 1, stopping disposal activities and only focusing on monitoring, control, and security of the landfill for an indefinite period. Option 2, continuing to do the same activities while also neutralizing immediate side effects and threats by treating leachate and capturing greenhouse gases until they no longer exist. Option 3, conducting full decommissioning and decontamination works to return the land to its original condition. And this option may also involve acquiring another remote piece of land to build a new landfill site to transfer the waste to, and the story goes again and again. The third option, which typically requires substantial time and investment, is, however, the only one that will ultimately convert the landfill into an asset and that can participate in the economic cycle and the city's master plan. Any other option keeps the land as a liability forever. This raises a question. Now, what is the total financial damage of the landfill site and how will it be compensated? Well, if we could choose a landfill site that is fully remediated and the plot is ready to be transferred to the city's asset list, then calculate backward the total expenses and lost opportunity cost due to the land not being utilized as an asset and developed properly from day one. Then we could divide these expenses and losses by the amount of waste that was ever deposited in the landfill throughout its whole life cycle and reach an accurate figure of the waste disposal fee that should have been imposed on the waste generator per ton of waste from day one. Simple, isn't it? But if we were to implement the comprehensive waste disposal fee from day one, it would be such that no additional funding would be required from the government to compensate for any cost related to landfill life cycle, including the aftercare activities, regardless which of the three options were to be chosen for the post-active life cycle care. This fee would consider capital, operational, financial, and environmental losses. For those who prefer bold numbers and equations, the theoretical section provided in this video is a comprehensive calculator method which combines all the expenses and incorporates them into the waste disposal fee. This allows for the assessment of the total disposal cost at any time and ensures that the sufficient funds are available for safe closure, monitoring, and control of the landfill. And it also allows for the possibility of full remediation without relying on government funding.